It's the Gashouse Gang on KMOX with Matt Pauley. I'm Tom Ackerman. What a thrill to be able to wrap the winter meetings with my man Matt, who is down in Dallas. Always a lot of fun to see what comes out of the winter meetings, no matter what the Cardinals situation is. And it just so happens that this year, intriguing on a number of levels. We've never gone through anything like this. And Matt, it's great to be with you. How are things on this Wednesday?
Yeah, things are starting to wrap up a little bit around here. A lot of people walking around with suitcases, meaning they're making their way out for the Rule 5 draft is getting underway momentarily. So some media folks are sticking around for that. I just saw Randy Flores walking through the lobby a few moments ago going in that direction. So he'll be part of that. But really, it feels like things are kind of coming to a close here for this year's edition of the winter meetings.
Who else did you see over there? Give me some sightums. Who you got?
Oh,
Celebrity. Let's start with Cardinals people. So we know John Mozeliak's in the suite.
mhm.
Ollie Marmol's been hanging out this week, right? You had the manager's breakfast?
Yep, we had the manager's breakfast this morning, which is always fun. It's a chance for the people who cover all the teams goes to sit at a table with their team's manager. So all the St. Louis media sat at a table, and we just had kind of a informal conversation with Oliver Marmol this morning, which is a lot of fun. And he is somebody who at times will ask us questions as much as we ask him questions. He was asking us about our jobs and the challenges that we have and things like that. So it's a really enjoyable experience that you really don't get to have once the grind of the season gets underway. But all the brain trust for the Cardinals, they're here. Chaim Bloom is here. Got the chance to talk with him for a few moments the other day. I told you, I think on yesterday's show, that we met Rob Serfolio for the first time. He's here. Daniel Descalso is here. He's the only member of the coaching staff that I've seen. That doesn't mean he's the only one that's here, but he's the only one that I've seen. So there's a lot of folks. And then the winter meetings is more than just on-field type stuff. So like one of the reasons that Ricky Horton was here, in addition to doing radio stuff with us, he was representing Cardinals alumni, and they had a long meeting yesterday. And what they did was, I talked to Ricky about this a little this morning, all the alumni groups gave presentations on what they do to keep alumni engaged. So it's kind of a best practices seminar, and everybody can hear what everybody else is doing. And Cardinals are as forward-thinking and as big of an alumni department as any team in baseball. So a lot of teams are listening to what the Cardinals do, because things like the Caravan and the Fantasy Camp and Winter Warm, all these things that alumni, the Budweiser bashes that they do during the season, that's something that a lot of teams in baseball don't do. There's been meetings with, all the traveling secretaries are here and they've had meetings. All the clubhouse people are here and they've had meetings. PR is here, not just to help us with Ollie and Mo, but they're here to have meetings as well. So that's a lot of information there, Tom. But I mean, it gives an idea of the type of people from all facets of the game of baseball are here doing work.
I love all that. I'm really glad that Ricky is doing that, by the way. He's so good at that. I mean, his job down at Fantasy Camp is to make everybody feel good about being part of the organization. He welcomes fans in. He's so good at it. And they do a phenomenal job with that Fantasy Camp, with the Caravan. All those things matter. They count. Al Raboski, going around suite to suite to suite and signing autographs and shaking hands. Every single time they do something and have an alum shake a hand, sign an autograph, you are connecting fans. And so teams, I think, could learn. I don't think anybody does it quite like the Cardinals do it. Ollie Marmol having breakfast with the media, I think, is a fun picture. He's actually really good with the media throughout the year, very accessible. And the manager has to be that. It's a big part of the job, actually, is to be engaged and visible to everybody, whether it's the front office, players, media, fans. He does a really nice job of it. Who's there from the media from St. Louis? I'm going to take a guess here. So you got Gould.
Yep.
You've got Wu.
Yes.
Denton.
Yes.
Obviously, Claibs and Horton. Who's there? Who else is there?
Linworthy, Jeff Jones are the other two people that
Jeff Jones
mentioned.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Jeff does a nice job. Lynn has done a terrific job. Post-Dispatch, pretty heavy on writing coverage. So from a radio standpoint, it's you, Claibs, and Horton.
Yeah, we're the only KMOX Cardinal Radio Network is the only broadcast media outlet from St. Louis that's here. So,
No
when you're
TV.
listening, no TV. So when you're listening to KMOX and you're hearing cuts from Oliver Marmol and you're hearing cuts from John Mozeliak, we're the only place that you're going to hear those because we're the only ones who are here. And just going back real quick and I don't know how much the average fan actually cares about what I'm about to say, but I did find it interesting. So before every Cardinal game, Tom, you know this, but I don't think a lot of fans do. Ollie does 3 separate media sessions. He does a session with the writers, he does a session with broadcast media, and then he does a session with the rights holders. In a lot of markets, it's not that way. They'll have the writers and the broadcast media will all kind of be glommed into one, and it's really nice that Ollie does that. And we were talking about that this morning, and Ollie actually said he'd rather keep it that way. So it takes him more time to do this a few hours before a game. So it's big important time for him. He said that he'd rather keep it that way because the line of questioning is different. When you're a print writer, you're looking for one thing. When you're a TV station, you're looking for something very different. So he likes being able to cater the conversation to the media person or the group of media that he's talking to at any given moment. And I don't think a lot of managers out there would think in that direction. I think they would rather just get it done as quickly and as painlessly as possible.
I like that a lot. I think that is a Tony La Russa page out of his book,
Mm-hmm.
honestly. Tony used to do that. He treated the writers very well. He treated us rights holders and radio and television rights holders, but other media, he'd let us all in on a lot of things, on and off the record, honestly, just to make sure that we were all informed. And Ollie does a good job of that. I do think people care about that. I think they want to know what's going on behind the scenes. And quite honestly, Ollie is growing within the job and has gotten better and better. Not that he wasn't good right away, but now maybe there's a little bit more of a comfort level in how he handles those things publicly and privately. And I think that's good. Those breakfasts, I mean, obviously a lot of that stuff is off the record, but how do you come out of that feeling about both on and off the record, maybe just overall, how do you feel he has handled this reset and this philosophy that the Cardinals have embarked on?
Yeah. In the actual breakfast, that we really didn't talk baseball this morning. That was one of the things we talked about life. We talked, we talked about families. We talked about stuff like that. So what I would say here doesn't really come so much from the breakfast. It just comes from other conversations we've been able to have. I think he's all in on this. And it's a really weird situation for him because there's no guarantee for Chaim Bloom is coming in to take over as president of baseball operations at the start of next season. Ollie, no matter how much time is actually left on his contract, there is no guarantee for him beyond this season. So if you're Ollie, you want to win, and you want to win a lot. And the way the Cardinals are setting things up this year might not be putting them in the best possible spot to win as many games as possible. But for the long-term health of the franchise, they are doing what they need to do. And to his credit, I think he recognizes that. He, along with much of the coaching staff, this was actually talked about by John Mozeliak in one of his media sessions over the last couple of days. This is a coaching staff that has a lot of guys who, broke into their careers working in the minor leagues and player development, and they all seem to be passionate about player development. And we are at a point in baseball right now where guys get to the big leagues and they are anything but a finished product. And there seems to be a level of excitement that guys who have done so much player development work in their careers might get to do even more of that this year at the big league level.
Yeah, that's really true. That's very true. And then, just finally on all of that, I look at his staff being together another year and developing, this is all about developing players, and developing players at the very top level is happening and very important. And we of course talk about Walker and Gorman being at the top of that list, but it really goes all the way through, except for, there's some veterans, but even like a Wilson Contreras is going to develop into a first baseman. I mean, we're going to be watching that right before our eyes. He's the leader of the team in my eyes.
It's that's one of the huge storylines. If this team is going to overachieve this year, Wilson Contreras in the middle of the order playing 150 games or so is probably a huge key to that. and he's got to go do the work to turn himself into at least a suitable defensive first baseman. I know we talked about this a little bit on yesterday's show and how he's going to work with Jose Oquendo, but that's a very big part of this team. I don't think you have to squint that hard to see a team that is better offensively. You've moved on from Paul Goldschmidt. Presumably, you're moving on from Nolan Arenado. As great as those guys have been 2 years ago, they're top 3 in the MVP voting with Goldie winning it. But you did not get offensive seasons from them last year that you would have liked to have gotten. So if you replace those guys and a Nolan Gorman and Jordan Walker can take a step forward, and Wilson Contreras can stay healthy and be in the lineup every day, and Lars Nootbaar can stay healthy and be in the lineup every day, to me, that's already a better offensive club than what you were last year. And if you're a better offensive club last year, you're a playoff team. It seems like, I don't know about you, Tom, there's like this revisionist history that they were a terrible team last year and that they were just buried. They were in a playoff spot for much of the year. They were a couple games out at the trade deadline. They made moves. The moves did not get them into the playoffs. Again, I'm not saying it was a successful year. It was a failure of a year in the sense that they did not make it to the playoffs, but they were the top team not to make the playoffs that had been eliminated more than one day before the season. Diamondbacks were eliminated on the final day. They're the first team out. The Cardinals were the next team out after that.
It's the Gashouse Gang on KMOX with Matt Pauley. I'm Tom Ackerman. We're sponsored by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer. It's all about managing expectations. Last year, they were expected to challenge or win the division, and when that fell short and it was apparent that it was falling apart, I think the fans got upset, and at one point, they started not showing up to the ballpark. I'm curious how that turns out this year, but it is about building for the future, and perhaps people will start to get on board with young players achieving great things. And who knows, maybe they take on an underdog mentality. It sure sounds like they want to be a winning club and they think they can compete in the NL Central if all the pieces fall together. That said, I think one of the most exciting things that happened thus far is getting the number 5 pick in the MLB draft. That is a big deal. I mean, They should have picked 13th on any given year. They won this lottery. There was a very slim chance that they were going to get 5. Matt, they got 7 last year and got J.J. Weatherholt. I mean, I don't know that Ethan Holiday is going to fall to him. He won't. But Weatherholt fell to him, and he was supposed to be the number 1 guy last year. This is going to be a huge building block for the future to have Weatherholt and the soon-to-be named number 5 pick.
Yeah, back-to-back years with top 10 picks. They're getting an extra compensatory pick in there, I believe, as well, this upcoming year. So essentially 2 first-round picks. It's a really good spot to be in when you're in a reset. And nobody likes picking high. Now, again, they had to be coming off a winning season. They had a winning record. I'm not saying, again, I understand they were not a playoff team. There's a lot of Cardinal fans who push back when we say winning season. It was an above 500 season. To be coming off a winning record and have the number 5 pick in the draft, that just doesn't happen very often. And this is a huge opportunity for this team to go add a big time talent into the organization.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, I don't know who they're going to pick. You can go through, there are all kinds of prospects out there. Selfishly, if he does rise into the top 5, Devin Taylor from Indiana is pretty darn good. Outfielder has been thought of as one of the up-and-comers, but that's just my familiarity level with my alma mater. He's kind of a corner outfielder. He got a sweet looking swing, good compact, and lots of power. We'll see how it all turns out. But they're going to get somebody great out there at number 5. I think that is an awesome development for the Cardinals. And then, looking at the Rule 5 draft, just remember what happened last year. They ended up getting who Helsley's not going to be traded, it doesn't look like, but if he is, Ryan Fernandez is probably your closer. I mean, they got him last year.
We'll see if they make a pick. Mo wasn't sure if they were going to make a pick. It hamstrings you a little bit because you have to leave the guy on the roster. And before Fernandez really established himself last year, there were some times where if there was not the roster requirement, he probably would have been sent down to AAA to work on some things. They didn't have that opportunity. So I don't know. I don't get the sense that the Cardinals are jumping to make a Rule 5 pick. But, there's some teams out there that can't make a pick because they don't have any spots on the 40-man roster. There's going to be other teams that also make the decision not to make a pick. So I get the sense that there might be just a handful of guys out there that the Cardinals might be interested in, and if it happens to get to them and some of those guys are available, they'll make the pick. But if not, it's not a wide list. So I really think it's sort of a 50-50 shot on them making a pick this year.
Okay, good insight there. Yeah, you just never know. The Rule 5 draft is what it is, but you just never know what could pop up. The Cardinals and Major League Baseball taking a look at that as we speak, and then that wraps up baseball's winter meetings. But it just is the beginning of the hot stove, and a lot of things have come out of this. We'll get into Arenado a little bit more here in just a bit, but I am curious about Roki Sasaki. What are you think the chances that the Cardinals legitimately have here to land somebody like that?
Yeah, the way I've worded this is, I think there's some clear front runners in this, and I don't think the Cardinals are a front runner, but I think they've got as good of a shot as any team that's not one of those clear, obvious front runners. Yesterday, his agent, Joel Wolf, the same agent for Nolan Arenado, he made comments that coming over from Japan, and he had some issues with the media in Japan, and he was treated somewhat poorly in Japan. There were some issues with him leaving at the age that he's leaving in, so people feel like he's been disrespectful. He had a family tragedy occur, and the media didn't handle it particularly well. So he's got a little bit of, I don't want to call it baggage, but I don't know a better term for it. Baggage has a negative connotation. So he's got stuff that he brings along with him. So putting him in the right place makes sense. So that's why maybe going to a smaller market team makes a little bit of sense. I think that a couple things working against the Cardinals is where they're at in their rebuild. Are they a reset? Is it time to bring in somebody like that? And also the Cardinals' track record with developing young pitching. If there's teams with a better track record that are also in those mid-sized markets, maybe they prefer to go in that direction. This is a really unique situation, though, Tom, because a lot of times when we talk about guys posting from Japan, we talk about big-time money. And for people who don't completely understand the system, and it's complicated, I won't take too much time on this. Essentially, once you have hit a certain age, if you come over from Japan and post, you're basically just like a free agent where you can get paid however much money a team wants to pay you. If you are under a certain age, then the money that you get paid comes out of your international bonus pool money that every team has a different amount of. And a lot of those teams have already designated a lot of their international money for people for next year. So they would have to basically renege on some deals to take some money out of that. But because you're limited to only using that amount of money, the amount of money that this kid's going to get paid is a lot lower than other situations. Does that make any sense whatsoever?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
Give me a scouting report on him. How good is he?
He's really good. I'd be lying if I told you I could break down all of his pitches, but I know his numbers. 2 years ago, he had an ERA below 2. This past year, I think it was like 2.35. He is considered to be one of the top pitchers in Japan, and we have seen in recent years, Yamamoto's another good example of that. I don't think he is not as highly thought of as what Yamamoto was for sure last year, but I think he's that next step below.
Well, that is absolutely the market to be watching globally. I don't think there's any question that is the number one emerging market. Wouldn't you agree?
100%. And the Cardinals need to, that's a market they need to be involved in. Absolutely. They probably haven't been as successful in the Asian market as they would have liked to have been. As some moves have happened this offseason, there's been some people who have been connected to the international or to the Asian market who have left the organization. So while the Cardinals, like most teams, have been very good when it comes to Latin America, I think they could be better when it comes to the Asian markets.
With Matt Pauley, I'm Tom Ackerman. It's the Gashouse gang from KMOX. We're everywhere, man. We're on Apple Podcasts now. That is a big deal. Spotify, Pandora, you name it. We're there all over the place. The Odyssey app, of course, and at KMOX, KMOX.com. you basically just do a search for Gashouse Gang. You're going to find us now, which is awesome. And I think the big one here, though, is YouTube. You should subscribe to our Camo X Sports YouTube page. Everybody knows how to get YouTube. Matt likes to pop it up on his TV in his home office and watch us on TV. We're all over the place. And, of course, YouTube's just very easy, user-friendly, easy to use. Follow us, subscribe to us, Camo X Sports. And while you're there, subscribe to The Bernie Show. Bernie Miklasz, our outstanding contributor here on KMOX. And, we've talked a lot about Nolan Arenado with Bernie, and we continue it today. And one of the things we were kicking around on our group text was this emergence of the Angels as a possible destination for Arenado. I still don't get it. I get only the fact that he's from Southern California and that it would be a comfortable place to be. But if you want to go win a World Series, is that the place to go? I mean, don't you want to be in the cauldron of New York or in the comforts of the Dodgers, who aren't going to probably connect with him at this point? The Red Sox, somebody else? I don't understand.
Yeah, the only thing there is obviously get to sleep in your own bed. And if you're not expecting to be on a team that's going to be contending at a really high level, if it comes down to one of two places, and that other place you get to sleep in your own bed, I guess that's a step up. Maybe he's not going there. Like, we could sit here and have all these conversations about the Angels being on the list. There's been no smoke, no fire connecting him to the Angels. The Angels aren't going to make that move. He's not going there. I don't know where he's going to go. I was a little surprised that the list that was reported yesterday did not include the Yankees. I feel like the Yankees are still in this. I pushed back on that a little bit. I think that could end up happening, but I have no inside information when I say that. But Tom, I'm like you. I can't tell you how shocked I would be if Nolan Arenado ends up as an Angel.
Yeah, well, I hope the best for him, whatever happens, because I do like him. I think that even though the numbers were down, I think he's great for the game. He's going to go to the Hall of Fame. He's one of the great third basemen of all time. I loved him when he was a Rocky, and loved him when he was a Cardinal, and I'll still watch him as he moves on to another team, although nothing's happened. But they've made it very public, both sides, that they're looking into a trade. There was a question we received on Twitter directed at the Gashouse Gang about his health, which I thought I would address. Have you ever heard anything on Arenado's health? He fell off a cliff on August 23rd, looked impaired at times, especially in the first half last season. Don't remember hearing any reports on him dealing with anything. Matt, he's been dealing with some back issues for the past couple of years. Nothing that really jumps out, but, every once in a while the back would tighten up on him. Other than that, I don't recall anything major happening to Arenado from a health standpoint. I do think that age perhaps caught up with him a little bit. What have you heard?
Yeah, I mean, he's been banged up. In 23, his season, they shut him down early. So he missed the end of the season in 23 because of that back issue. This past year, he had a forearm and a wrist issue, if I remember correctly. So he plays the game really, really hard, and he's getting a little bit older. Mike Claiborne and I were having a conversation about this 2 spring training ago. So going into the 23 season, he and Ozzie Smith sat down during spring training. Claibs had kind of set that up for his Claibs Online, and they went through a conversation. And one of the questions that Nolan asked Ozzie was, when you're getting deep into the season and your body is starting to hurt a little bit, do you take the foot off the pedal, start pumping the brakes a little bit in terms of preparation? And Ozzie said, no, you got to fight through that, and you got to take more ground balls every single day before games. But it was an interesting question from Arenado, and I think it gave us a little bit of an insight into the fact that he was already feeling that the body just wasn't there. And the back issue is the big thing. The back issue is what ended his season early 2 years ago, and it tends to pop up every once in a while. But those other nagging things, the wrists and the forearms and all that, they certainly have been around over the last couple of years.
Interesting question right there that just popped up from Ken Gregory about Arenado and Goldie dealing with the media. It's a fair question. I will say, though, that neither of them have ever had a problem with the media. Goldschmidt has been wonderful in answering questions, especially in tough moments. I've always been impressed with Goldie being straightforward about the struggles that he's had. And Arenado also. I think if there's one thing about Arenado that he's admitted to in the past is he's not a big, vocal leader. And Goldie's not really either, quite honestly. He's a very soft-spoken sort of lead by example type of guy. Perhaps that the two would be comfortable in a situation where they're not the number one guy anymore, where they're in an ensemble of great players, but they're both big time pros. They've been around at the highest of levels. I don't think there would be any issue with them dealing with media. I mean, I see Arenado and national media and New York media and everybody else when the Cardinals are playing any of those high profile teams, they come right to Nolan. He answers all questions. He's been wonderful. Goldie's been wonderful. So I don't think there's any issue there whatsoever.
No, the guys who don't get along with the media are the guys who are kind of squirrely and adversarial and things like that. And that's not Goldschmidt. That's not Arenado. I'm sure there's times where they quietly grumble about, things that are being said or questions that are being asked. But just don't mistake, like, for Goldschmidt not saying a whole lot with not being good with the media. He's quiet. He's reserved. He chooses his words very, very carefully. But it's never adversarial. Don't forget, with Arenado, when it got a little uncomfortable a couple years ago about when there was some speculation about him maybe being on the trade market, and there was a lack of communication between him and the organization, and he was getting a lot of questions about it, he left the clubhouse. He came back into the clubhouse and readdressed the media because he felt like he had not told the story all the way and wanted to make sure to be on the record for how he was feeling. So that's not a guy who's ever going to have a hard time with the media.
Yeah, I agree. And both guys are terrific. They really are great, great guys. And by the way, they loved being in St. Louis. Make no mistake about it. And they chose really in a lot of ways to be here in St. Louis because of the baseball town, because they're baseball guys. Arenado recently jumped into social media. Part of that, I think, was some outside business ventures and some encouragement from his brother. But Goldschmidt, there's no chance he's going to be on social media ever.
No.
And I think he likes it that way. Goldie wants to go to the ballpark. He wants to be a great teammate. He wants to play hard and then go home to his family and barbecue or play golf or whatever he does, and then get up in the morning and go down to the ballpark. He liked being in a family town like St. Louis. That does not mean that he couldn't handle New York or LA or anything like that, or either of those guys for that matter, are kind of the same. They're both, family guys. They're not walk the runway, glitz and glamour type guys, but if they had to, I think they could be versatile if they needed to. I'll be fascinated to see where they go. I will.
Yeah. And I don't think, the media could be a little more conflict based in New York, but I don't think it's because they're trying to create conflict. I think that's just who people are in New York. That's the personality of that city. So sometimes I think people make too much of media type situations.
I do too. And fans, like the Cardinals fans are soft or something. No, they're not. They'll get on you pretty hard. And as we saw last year, they won't show up. If something is not right, they're not coming. So they're not sheep. If people think the Cardinals fans are in that category, they showed that loud and clear last year without a doubt. And just a final thought on that, as you move ahead here with this team, I like going back to the look of the baseball team and leadership. We talked a lot about Contreras being the leader, but Matt, I don't remember asking you, second, third, fourth, fifth, maybe leaders on this team. When you see Sonny Gray, we did mention his name, of course, on the pitching side, but who else comes to mind for you in terms of being a guiding light, let's say, for some of the younger players?
Brendan Donovan, 100% Brendan Donovan. He is, if Wilson Contreras is captain, leader, number one, Brendan Donovan is 1A. So he is right there. He started taking that into his own hands a little bit last year. He checks all the boxes from a character, personality standpoint. So absolutely, I think that's enough. I think that's good. Like there's some other older. They're going to sign a pitcher or two. I think that's going to be in the bullpen. I don't think they've closed the door on Andrew Kittredge. If it's not Kittredge, if he goes and gets paid somewhere else, and I hope that happens for him. But there's going to be somebody in the profile of an Andrew Kittredge who's going to get signed. They got to get this Arenado thing figured out. They're going to drop that payroll, but they're not going to be done. There's going to be some major league contracts that end up getting signed this offseason, and I'm most confident that that's going to involve relief pitchers. So you're going to bring in probably a veteran or two for at least from a relief pitching standpoint, because I think Kittredge kind of held that role last year. I think he was somebody that people looked up to and watched how he went about his business as a relief pitcher, and that's a guy who made himself available to pitch every single day. That's the kind of guy you want leading the way.
The Gashouse Gang, sponsored by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an American Standard air conditioning and heating dealer. I've got all kinds of stuff to listen to when it comes to the podcast here of the Gashouse Gang. Not that I go back and listen to myself, but listen to you guys tomorrow and also Friday, whoever's on. And for you, Sports Open Line certainly has been a great outlet. But here comes Countdown to Opening Day, the network show. It starts tomorrow. And what kind of things do you have lined up? This is a show that's an absolute must for Cardinals fans. And by the way, just so people know, after we talk about this, I want to get into some other sports before we depart here today. We got some time still. What's coming up on Countdown to Opening Day, the network show?
Yeah, so Claves and I have been here kind of collecting interviews and talking to people, and we're going to play a lot of that back, not just tomorrow, but next week as well. We've gotten so much stuff here. Claves has a conversation with Dave Roberts, the Dodgers manager, so that's going to be on. We've got a conversation with Oliver Marmol. We've got a conversation with John Mozeliak. Claves and Ricky do about 20 minutes talking about the Hall of Fame inductions this week, specifically former Cardinal Dick Allen as he is headed into the Hall of Fame. We've just talked with countless people here, so you're going to hear all of that, not just coming up tomorrow, Thursday night, but moving forward, and we'll be getting more stuff on a weekly basis. So I love doing this show. I love working with Claves, and what's amazing, Tom, is how quick it goes now, because winter meetings, the next thing we know, it's going to be winter warm-up Cardinal Caravan Weekend. That's right around the corner. And then the next thing that happens after that is pitchers and catchers report. Man, we are on the fast track to baseball being played once again now that we've gone through the winter meetings.
By the way, speaking of Hall of Fame, I see that Tom Hamilton, the Guardians play-by-play man, won the Ford C. Frick Award. What a great selection. Gosh, do I love listening to Ham call games.
One of my all-time favorite current broadcasters, because I don't know if you do this, Tom, like I'll bring up the MLB app, and when the Cardinals aren't playing, if they have an off day, and who's playing an afternoon game today that I can just kind of have on in the background. It seems like Cleveland plays a lot of those. I can't tell you how often I listen to Cleveland Guardians baseball, and I love listening to Hamilton.
Let me say two names that need to be considered for the Hall of Fame. One of them is Mike Shannon.
100%.
First started with us in the early 1970s and absolutely needs to be discussed. And I'm going to tell you right now that John Rooney's name is going to come up here in the next few years, several years, whatever the case may be, whatever window that is. That guy is unbelievable. I mean, I know he's our guy, but John is as close to perfection as I can find as a play-by-play man on baseball radio.
Yeah, so a couple things. It's disappointing because they'll do a local they like cycle through. So 1 year's a local broadcaster, 1 year's a national broadcaster. So it can't be back-to-back years of getting a local broadcaster, which kind of stinks because there's so many well-deserving individuals out there. And Mike Shannon, it's a shame that Shannon did not go in before he passed away, but even a posthumous induction is definitely deserved for him. John Rooney absolutely should be in the Hall of Fame. And since we're talking about this, the Missouri broadcasters earlier this week announced their next Hall of Fame class. How about Jim Jackson? 2 Hall of Fame classes in one. He was in the Missouri, got inducted to the Missouri Sports Hall of Fame a couple weekends ago, and now he's going into the Missouri Broadcasters Hall of Fame.
I love it. The guy's an absolute stud. We had 3 KMOXers going to the Missouri Broadcasters Hall of Fame in Jim Jackson, Ron Jacober, and Joe Buck. Joe's pretty good.
Yeah.
And gets into the NBA Hall of Fame. Let me get into a few of the comments that popped up in areas of other sports. First of all, the St. Louis Blues. Holy cow, the Jim Montgomery effect is real. He wins again, 4-3 in overtime over the Canucks, a good team.
Yeah.
They go 3-1 on the Western Canadian road trip, Matt. And this time it's Dylan Holloway with the overtime tally. He has 10 goals on the season. He has been electric. This Blues team is fun. They're 3 points out of a playoff spot as we speak right now.
What was impressive about last night's game was they were up, and then Vancouver, they pull the goalie, and they just start swarming, and they score the equalizer to force overtime. If you're the Blues, the final game of a 4-game Canadian road trip, you can kind of say to yourself, well, we gave it our best shot, but this might not be our night. What happens? They go to overtime, and not that long into the overtime period, there's Dylan Holloway, who has been spectacular, especially recently. My goodness. And he scores. I mean, the fact that they were able to pull themselves off the mat so quickly after giving up what felt like a debilitating goal there at the end of regulation, that showed a lot about the character of this team. I try to be fair in everything that I talk about. And if I'm going to take issue with some of the character type things that we've seen with this Blues team previously under Drew Bannister and even during Craig Berube's end of his time, well, then when they show big-time character, man, Tom, we got to talk about it. And they showed it last night.
Yes, they did. It's really exciting. And I want to go to the game tomorrow. I'm coaching basketball, though. I can't get there. But, I love what I do. But getting to a hockey game is going to be a hot ticket now. I mean, not that it wasn't before, but they're going to be playing the Sharks tomorrow night at Enterprise Center, and that's awesome. And, anytime the Blues take the ice now is a thing. And who knows? I mean, they start to creep into the playoff picture. You could start getting memories of 5 years ago. It's probably a little early to start thinking about that, but gosh, who knows? I don't know. I mean, they're fun. Now, here's the other hot ticket is the bragging rights game.
Yeah.
Mizzou and Illinois on December 22nd is going to be electric. Illinois won last night. They beat Wisconsin, and now they get number 1 Tennessee on Saturday. And you know what? They're going to beat them. It's going to be a 4:30 tip at home against Tennessee. Illinois is going to win that game, just like Mizzou beat number 1 Kansas at Mizzou Arena. And then you're going to have the showdown of Mizzou and Illinois, 2 up-and-comers. Illinois has established itself with Brad Underwood, but they have a new look, new players on the floor. And then Mizzou. That team's legit. That team is legit, and I think could be a problem moving forward in a very stacked SEC.
Yes. People have said, so I'll repeat what other people who are smarter than me have said, that this might be Brad Underwood's most talented team at Illinois. And you think about some of his teams he's had, that says a lot. They are fun to watch. They didn't play well against Northwestern. Underwood called him out for it. And then they have the Wisconsin performance. That Mizzou win against Kansas is a special win. That was one of those special days of college basketball for that program and for fans. So I hope you're right. I hope that Illinois is able to knock off Tennessee, and then that would really set up quite the showdown for these 2 teams.
I always say I love Illinois, except when they're playing Indiana. I love them other than that. But the other one is St. Louis University. Don't sleep on SLU just yet. They have had some struggles. I appreciate that, David. Thank you. But the Billikens have a coach who knows how to build programs. He did it at Lincoln Memorial. He did it at Indiana State, and he is going to do it at St. Louis University, but it does take time. Josh Schertz is going to play 7 players basically the entire game, maybe 8 if you're lucky, probably 7. He will ride the starters all day, and those starters are healthy. Even though this team is dealing with injuries, Robbie Avila and Isaiah Swope, who came over from Indiana State, Gibson Jimerson, who just became SLU's all-time leader. It's a tremendous trio. Then you add a rebounding machine like Kalu Anya. They could use some more size, so they got to get A.J. Casey healthy. But on top of that is Kellen Thames. And if they can figure out why Thames keeps cramping up, in the recent game he played 23 minutes, so that's a huge improvement. That's a good starting 5 that he will ride. And then he'll bring Amari McCautry, his freshman, off the bench. And if he has some health, he'll bring some other guys off of there as well. But he can run an offense like nobody's business. Josh Schertz will run an offense that is beautiful to watch. And Robbie Avila is coming into his own. He is controlling the floor and looking really good. So it's just a matter of time before they start making a dent in the Atlantic 10. And then you'll see that's going to be their pathway to the NCAA tournament, unless the tides turn a little bit. Their at-large possibilities aren't great. Although, they're their losses, Santa Clara, Wichita State, those two teams, as well as San Francisco, are all actually really good teams and could all well make some noise. So I don't think it's over yet for SLU whatsoever.
No, I don't think so either. And I think Josh Church still has some challenges getting his team to play the way he wants them to play. And he has spoken very openly about that so far this year. But it is a challenge being a first-year head coach where you're integrating guys that you brought with you, guys that were in the program before you got there, and guys who are coming from other schools. So you've got those like three different groups trying to get it all put together. That's why you build out a non-conference schedule. I don't think anybody really looked at this team as to being a likely at-large bid, but they're setting themselves up for A-10 play, and I think everybody can just be hopeful that they get it put together before conference play does get started.
Good stuff, my friend, from the winter meetings. Outstanding work. We'll be listening to you on Sports Open Line tonight. We will hear countdown to opening day shortly, and that's going to be Thursday and every Thursday throughout the offseason. Can't wait to revisit all of your Dallas travel stories when you come back. That is either for the Gashouse Gang or off the record. I love hearing them. Say hi to Claves and Ricky for me, and we'll catch up with you soon.
All right. Sounds great. Thanks, Tom.
Good stuff. Matt Pauley from the Gashouse Gang. Tom Ackerman here. This is our KMOX sports office here in St. Louis. The Gashouse Gang, available everywhere now. Sponsored by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an American Standard air conditioning and heating dealer.